Alright guys, welcome to the match analysis for my CGGR match. Shot this last weekend, and this was a difficult match. The stages were fairly complex. The target presentations were not obvious. There were lots of options, but I'll kind of talk to those as I get to them. This first stage, let's see. I guess the main thing with this stage is I had just woken up late, and so I got to the range late, and so I got basically about 30 minutes to look at the, well, there were 6 stages total, 1 classifier, so there were 5 stages really, and I only got about 30 minutes to look at them instead of my preferred hour and 15 minutes, especially for stages of this complexity and difficulty. So I basically had just kind of figured out exactly what targets I was going to take from where, my general plan. Even though I was third on the stage, that wasn't really enough time to visualize in, say, the techniques. If I were doing this again, I think I would probably still run roughly the same plan. I probably would, so I had 6 magazines, and I put 4 of them on this central spool. And if I had to do it again, I'd probably move 1 at least to one of the outside spools, but I was literally in such a rush that I just put the one on the outside spools that I knew I would need there, and then just put everything else in the middle, just because I figured, who knows, if something goes wrong, I've got all my extras there. But I had 2 left there, and if I'd had a problem at either end, I wouldn't have had a spare. But anyway, let's take a look at the stage. You start with the gun unloaded, pick up a mag, 8 rounds from here. There's one of my makeups, there's my second, so I know I'm going to slide lock already. Reload, I have 9 rounds from this position, so I know I have to be careful. So I'm aiming pretty hard on these steel targets. Overrun this position, which really I didn't have to move very far. And then here at the end, pretty straightforward, but there's just one guy kind of hiding behind this barrel. And that second shot right there, it just barely glanced the barrel. It did end up, turning a little sideways. There was enough of a grease ring to score it, but it was just not the way I wanted to start the day. It was a almost a miss on the first stage, and I was already feeling kind of flustered from overrunning that position, and not a good start to the day. This didn't look like a complicated stage, but it still somehow flustered me a little bit. I was really happy with this unloaded start right here. That's been something I've been working on, and so the fact that just kind of happened, especially moving right to left, I was pretty happy with that. That went well. You can see there, I kind of overshoot the position again. Like I'm thinking that this is a longer move. Like, look at how hard I'm pushing out of position. And then it's 2 steps. I'm actually like having to kind of catch myself again. So drop step out to move 2 steps. Again, these are the little details that if you actually think through the stages and sort of visualize, I could have sort of calmly walked as I did a nice reload, but instead I was sort of focusing on really pushing hard, and so I overshot that move. Here again, I know I've got 1 makeup shot, so I'm aiming pretty hard. The close guys you don't have to aim too hard on, but then the steel targets, here again I kind of push out of position pretty aggressively, but it's only 2 steps. I actually have to backtrack a little bit and shoot at a little bit of an awkward lean that really was not necessary. If I just had sort of smoothly just taken maybe 1 step and stopped, right here, or even a foot or 2 to the left, would have been easier shots and just sort of smoothly work through the position. But I kind of knew that I needed to be over here in the next position, and I hadn't sort of visualized in the little details of exactly how far to move. So I ended up doing this, aggressive push out, even though, like I said, no reason. Last position, I knew I had plenty of rounds, but I still didn't want to go crazy. But even here, I sort of stopped. I stopped where, right behind the spool to pick up the mag, and then I have to do a little half move on a pretty tough shot. So I don't know if you can quite see it, but yeah, I've kind of got this back foot. I'm up on my toes there. And so, no surprise that the second shot kind of went a little wild. I didn't have the most stable base to control the recoil. And honestly, I was thinking more about footing and target presentation and just not really gripping the gun. So, yeah, if we back that up so you can kind of see it all here again. Yeah, so, no dumpster fire, but just kind of herky jerky and not the way I wanted to start the day. The the second stage, I was actually first on this stage, which is funny because I sort of knew that I was going to be first, and so I really took the visualization seriously and felt pretty ready. One thing that will be interesting, you'll watch, I was like really focused on drawing the gun, getting it out, and aiming at this first target and getting those shots off quickly. And then you can sort of see a moment of hesitation because I realized I don't have a plan after that. I mean, the plan was just to shoot the rest of the array, but I kind of switched from this very well visualized set of steps into just kind of shoot the rest of the array, and you can see the sort of hesitation as I have to shift. So the interesting thing about this stage was there were kind of two ways to shoot it. Those last two targets that I took from the end, you could see them from this position. So if you kind of turned 45 degrees to the right, you could see them from here, and then you didn't have to back out. I don't know if my plan was the best or not. I was about 15 seconds. Someone else that ran the other plan was like high 13s, but he also dropped more points. So we ended up basically tying on hit factor, and I dropped a lot of Charlies for really stupid reasons. Like nothing, like a lot, like I think that looks like 2 alpha. There's a Charlie. So that's Alpha Charlie. I think that was 2 alpha. Yeah, there's a Charlie. So just more Charlies than you would expect here, or than I should have had. So I still think this was a decent plan. I visualized it well. We'll see the third person. There was really only one major flub, but I think it was also just sort of over focused on this first target. Really happy with that shooting while backing out. That was kind of the goal, is I wanted to already be, it was a long enough move that I wanted to be leaving on that guy, but I think I just, for whatever reason, I was shooting target focus on the first target and then had to find my sight for the second one. So there's just that noticeable pause, but really happy with kind of how these two positions blended together. But again, I was thinking about the movement and the technique, and so I didn't really grip the gun or aim that hard. I was just kind of going through the motions of aiming while I was focusing on backing out, having the gun loaded, and having it up and shooting the next targets in the right order without sort of thinking about aiming at them. So that was the plan, is I wanted to shoot that inside guy so I could kind of keep moving forward. Most of the people that I was shooting were shooting that array outside in, and that meant that they kind of got jammed up shooting that inside guy. So I wanted to get him first at the end of this long move. That was why I wanted to sort of leave that previous position aggressively, was so I could be here by the time the gun was loaded and shoot those on the run, more or less. Now, the one thing that we saw on the last stage that we'll see again here is just overshooting a movement. So I felt like I needed to shoot this one and then start moving towards the targets at the end. But as you'll see, I basically, again, just over push on the movement when it's, what, 2 steps? And I think at least one of those last 4 shots, I think at least one was a Charlie, maybe two. And there again, it was just I was thinking about the movement more than the than aiming. I mean, at that point, it was basically point shooting. But still, just dropping a Charlie on a 1 yard target is just stupid. So had a pretty good feeling coming out of that one. A few too many Charlies. It's pretty rare that I have a perfect stage. Usually, the best I can hope for is just a few Charlies. A few too many Charlies, and so felt pretty good coming out of that one. This stage was pretty darn straightforward, and so it basically just 4 positions, shoot 6 or 8 rounds from each. Because I was first on last one, I was basically last on this stage, and so I think this is kind of where I started getting a little complacent, running the timer for too long, only passing it off when I was maybe 3 shooters away from shooting. And I mean, even on this stage, there's a lot of moving the gun to the right targets, knowing kind of when you shoot one exactly where the next one's going to be. The targets aren't sort of arrayed in obvious arrays, and so this wasn't too bad. I don't remember exactly where the two deltas were. They were on the long distance targets. It was alpha delta on two of the long distance ones, just from over transitioning. But this one went again okay, and I think I started to get complacent about running the timer and not taking the time to actually visualize the stage. And that really, I think, just came unraveled on this stage, which was well, it didn't go well, but we'll look at why. So I knew from my original plan, I knew there were a couple ways to shoot this, but I just decided I was going to shoot everything from this first box that I could, and that just let me run down range and be done with it. And what that did was I had 9 rounds to shoot 11 shots, including hitting 3 28-yard mini poppers, which I wanted to have a couple extra rounds, but I thought 2 extra rounds would be plenty. So I know I've used my 2 makeups now, so I've got to hit this shot. So when I had to do that reload, I was just kind of like cursing myself, and so I wasn't focusing on the reload, and so I flubbed that, which made me curse myself more, which so it just becomes a spiral of letting a small thing that goes wrong bloom into something bigger and bigger. Now I did shoot good points, 3 Charlies on paper for the stage, so I was aiming enough. But I was still thinking about that past mistake, and so right here, I actually, in the next mag, I take a target that I meant to leave for later. So that was planned. Then this first paper target in this next mag, I was planning to take from the next mag, and so I just, because I'm thinking about what's already happened, I just walk myself right into another standing reload. This guy. Again, if I hadn't missed that steel shot, I would have had this extra round. But those 2 errors combined made another standing reload. So, back that up. It was total stage time of 44 seconds, which I don't think I've ever had a stage that with a time of 44 seconds. But hey, first time for everything. You can see I'm not gripping the gun really at all. It's just flipping all over the place. Yeah, so I actually, I mean, in retrospect, basically virtually tying for worst on production, or, not tying for worst, but tying for having my run be no worse than anybody else's was a little bit surprising. But that was, yeah, that was pretty demoralizing. I was kind of mentally done after that for the day. And so I just kind of went into the classifier, shooting pretty aggressively. Nothing really interesting to say here. 2 mics, both on the rightmost target, which I genuinely, I mean, I called the deltas. There were 3 deltas. I called all 3. No idea where the 2 mystery mics went. Like, I didn't even get third-person video of that stage just because I was like, yeah, it's Classifier. Not worth videoing, whatever. So this stage was pretty divisive. You could actually shoot all the stuff at the end from this rear shooting area, but I just decided, even though it meant doing a standing reload, that I was going to go all the way forward and just shoot everything from up close, because generally, in my experience, when I've tried to stand back and snipe, it's ended up being slow and risky. So overall, on the paper, only 1 Charlie. I'm pretty happy with that. And everything went according to plan. Hit that guy, hit that guy. You could actually see these targets, so I have to go over to the other side of the shooting area. You could see them from here, but I'd planned to take them from back here because I was already pointing the gun there. Plan was to hit everything over there and then come in to this other spot aimed at this target over here. But because I had that one left up, I shot at it, and I knew that I was going to be short on rounds, but again, just pushing things to the limit. Did another slide lock reload. Not great. If I could do it again, I'd run the same plan, but just hit the steel the first time. So skip the reload that I was planning to do moving up, and then just shoot the slide lock here, do the reload, go to the other side, and then finish up from there. That was a planned slide lock reload, but it's not saying much. So this one actually, went pretty much to plan, except for just that miss. But again, you can see even here, I'm thinking about hitting the right target, hitting the right spots, so I'm not really gripping the gun. So it's just flipping all around on me. And I think most of these steel misses were weak, like insufficient weak hand grip, and over muscling with the strong hand finger, pulling the trigger, and so just pushing it either low and left or straight left. So not a great match. I mean, the scores don't look too terrible, and it didn't tag a bunch of no shoots. Didn't even have any scored misses for the day. That one hardcover barrel hit on the first stage had me a little bit scared, but just generally an interesting match because I visualized the targets and the spots and went everywhere and shot the right things from the right spot. But in terms of actually executing techniques and in the little details, things like that first stage, using the right amount of pressure to leave a position, really just gripping the gun. I just was not gripping the gun all day, and that meant trigger finger was pushing shots low and left. I'm pretty sure that's where almost all the steel hits went. And so just a reminder that it's not just enough to visualize the spots to go to in each stage and what to shoot from there, but then the transitional elements, so how hard to push out of each position, knowing your marker, where you're going to in your next position, finding some landmark that you're moving to, so you know how far do I need to move, how hard, how aggressively do I need to move there, and then after all that's done, just leaving your mind free to do those things and trust that they'll happen, and then focusing on gripping the gun, aiming it, and pulling the trigger right, and that's sort of where your focus should be while you're actually shooting. If you're having to think about which targets do I shoot from here, after I shoot this target, where do I go next, when I'm leaving this position, what's my landmark for the next one, if you're having to sort of consciously access those memories while you're shooting, then you're not focusing on the technique, and that's what I was doing. So this was a fine performance, but given that this match was 2 weeks before nationals, and I'm really trying to be at that point where I can just shoot, focus on having a nice grip on the gun. You know, not gripping hard, but just having a nice, comfortable grip so that the sights return reliably and just calling shots. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't calling the shots uh, because I was still thinking about moving and positioning in which target to shoot. And so I was sort of further down on the ladder of things that should have been in my subconscious. Since they weren't, they pushed the other stuff out. And so that was kind of the lesson for the day. Other than that, I just tried to chalk it up and say, you know, I know I can do better and do better at nationals, where, you know, I won't be trying to take the timer and I'll have nothing to do except just really burn in the stages and make sure to visualize at sort of all the rungs of the ladder all the way up to where I want to be, so that when it's time to shoot, I'm just moving to the right spots, gun is aimed at the right spots. I know what target order to shoot at, and I can just grip the gun, call my shots. So that's it for today.